I think The Way Things Work was the first educational show I saw when I was below the age of 8, and it was in the house of an aunt of mine. I think I was at vacation in there with my mother. That was like the context of it. The show follows a group of researchers that live in a island full of mammoths, and they use those mammoths to teach physics. Um, I think it's only physics. So at my age, I wouldn't understand nothing of it. Um, but yeah, anyway, I would watch it anyway. Um, I remember aired very late, like 8, which was late for me. Um, and well, it still is kinda. Um, I think there was the hour I went to bed yesterday. If it wasn't earlier. Um, but yeah, I didn't even knew the channel at the time, so every day I would ask my mother to um, put the TV on the cartoon of the elephants. So she did that for the entire vacation. And then we went back home, and then the show disappeared. Um, my mother uh, would put it at the same channel, and it wouldn't be there anymore. Um, I think she talked to one of her friends about it, and they confirmed that the show wasn't being aired anymore. So it became kinda of a lost media for me um, during quite some time because I didn't know the show's name or where it aired until I got to around 15 years old. Um, it seems that it got cancelled due to lack of audience. So you all owe me that show back because I really liked it. And if you all had watched it, if you all had watched that with me, I would still have new episodes coming out to this day. Um, then there was Cyber Chase. Cyber Chase was a sci-fi fantasy cartoon um, for, I assume, based on what I remember from it, ages 11 to 14 kids that taught um, that taught them mathematics principles, um, and I think there was physics and chemistry in there too, but mostly mathematics. Um, there was these 3 kids that got trapped inside a computer dimension. At least that's what I assume it was, because one of the characters was the concept of a motherboard, and the main villain was called the hacker. And their goal in there was to help the motherboard to fight against the hacker, and they would do so using math. That was the main idea of it. In my memory, if my memory isn't playing tricks on me, every episode would teach something different, and they would teach a bunch of variety stuff. Like, I remember episodes about basic math operations, um, equations, number groups, which is when I discovered there was stuff below um, zero. Um, I don't know why, but I also remember an episode about a jar filled with candy, and the characters were trying to figure out how much candy was in the jar, which played a bigger part later on. This type of stuff. But since I was ahead of my time, um, like I was watching this when I was 10, um, I think. Maybe at a lower age. Um, but I was watching it at the maximum of 10 years old. Um, and that was a problem because I had terrible teachers at the time, and I have a clear memory of two instances where the show made me have lower grades. Um, the first one was due to negative numbers. We would be learning subtractions at school, and then there would be some problems like 10 minus 7, which is easy, right? I think the answer is 3. Um, but the teacher would also give us problems like 7 minus 10, to which I would answer negative 3, which is wrong, as everyone knows. Like the teacher looked at me and said that negative 3 didn't existed because you can't have a negative of something. And the reason she gave us that um, that equation was to show that some subtractions are impossible to solve and don't have an answer. And the second time was due to inexact division. Um, at least I think that's how it's called. And I think you can also figure out where this is going. So again, I believe it was the same teacher. Um, um, she would give us normal operations like 33 divided by 3, but she would also give us problems like 7 divided by 3, which would be 2.2 point whatever. Um, and this whatever that I said also didn't existed. Like, let's say 7 divided by 3 is 2.75. Um, so I would answer that, and then the teacher would say that 2.75 does not exist. Um, and I still remember the words. She said something like, this point 6 don't exist. If you can't continue the operations, you stop there. Because it was, I won't remember the equation, but the answer was um, something like 13.6. And then she said, this point 6 does not exist. If you can't continue, you just stop there. You stop at the 13. Um, but yeah, teachers will do this type of shit and then complain that their students don't engage in class, which is, I would say, is understandable. Um, like the kid is giving you the proper answer and you just ignoring it and say it does not exist. At the same period of time I was watching Cyber Chase, I was also watching Pythagoras Switch. Pythagoras Switch was a quote unquote interval show. Let's call it that because it had very short episodes that they could fit in between other cartoons. Um, like in the interval between two other shows that had longer episodes. Um, it didn't had character development, and the sections of the show would end in 5 or less minutes. 5 minutes showing something, then 5 minutes showing another thing, and so on. The stars were these two puppet penguins, who would have a question they would ask to this book guy, like, how do airplanes fly? And the book would give a very simplistic answer to it, um, because it was more for very young kids to have a minor comprehension of the world around them and to not um, not think everything's magic. And then he would tell the penguins to read his page, whatever. To read, like, he would give the explanation, and then he would say something like, "Oh, um, you can learn more about it on my page 835." To which the penguins would reply, "We're free kids. We are kids. We cannot read yet." Um, then there would be this dog TV that would show a clip of someone explaining the subject in a little more detail, and now with images. Um, there was a section of a Rube Goldberg machine that would always. Let's try it again. um, Rube Goldberg machine, um, that would always end with it spelling the name of the show, which I will try to copy in my drawings as well as create my own. Um, and there was also an exercise section, kind of a stretching section with these two guys that I found funny to do. Um, but yeah, what can we get from it? Um, I don't know, maybe that I was giving signs of autism from a very early age. Um, the cartoon would be heavily scripted, all things always happening the same way on every single episode, and I would still find enjoyment on it. I would still find, um, I would still uh, like to watch it, even though most episodes would be basically the same. Um, but yeah, honorable mention to Zubumafu, I guess. I don't remember much of it though. Um, just that it was biology focused, and there was this puppet lemur along two guys that were the stars of the show. Um, the opening was really catchy though. Um, but yeah, that was the things that I watched when I was growing up. But then things started to change. Um, so those were the educational shows that I used to watch, and most of the time I would skip everything else. Like the most, I wanted to be watching the most popular cartoons out there, um, like, I don't know, Dragon Ball. I Dragon Ball I never watched when I was a kid. I like I watched a couple of episodes after growing up, but it was mostly because I did a switch with a friend of mine. Like, um, I was trying to convince him to watch JoJo Bizarre's Adventure, Um, and so we did a trade. He would watch a couple of episodes from JoJo, and I would watch a couple of episodes from Dragon Ball. But yeah, um, when I was a kid, I didn't really watch those. I remember watching like Ben 10, and I don't know, but I think that's basically it. Most of the time, I would be watching educational stuff. Um, and there was also this one channel that I remember that was only educational cartoons. They would have other things in their schedule, like news reports or whatever, soccer games, um, normal stuff, and but the cartoon sections um, were just educational stuff and nothing else. And that was my favorite channel. Um, I remember late at night, it also had the Total Drama Action, I think, Total Drama Island, which was one of the few exceptions to the rule, and like the only non-educational show that that channel had, and still it would air really late at night. Um, but nothing that is good lasts forever. So with time, they started to like change the schedule. They started to remove some of the educational shows and put other stuff in there, like Dora the Explorer, um, which I didn't like it. Um, and then they would start to put um, other things between the shows. So at the beginning were just cartoons. So there would be this period of the day, like between 8 in the morning um, up to 12. During this period, they would be um, airing cartoons for kids, right? And there was um, nothing in between the shows. Um, like there would be the advertisement, um, but there would be it. Um, and then with time, they started to put adults pretending to be kids between the shows. Um, really retarded stuff. Um, and that was not for me. That's what I can say about it. And I started to lose interest in it. Um, and they kept the trend, like to the point where there was no other educational show in the channel. It was all brain rot cartoons. Um, and then like they also started to expand the real life parts, the parts of um, where we would have the adults dressed as kids playing around in this playground like um, studio. Um, but yeah, when I got to the age of 11, around that time was when I started to have access to a computer and internet. What could possibly go wrong, right? Um, well, it turns out a lot, but that's for another video. Um, I started searching for educational stuff in there, Like there was a couple of YouTube channels I would religiously watch, but most important, um, that was how I discovered Big Man's World, a show about this weird guy with a funny hair and a stinky hat, a stinky breath, um, as a friend that will teach kids. Well, I don't remember what. I guess it was everything. I remember an episode about rain and mountains. I remember a very specific scene with a basketball hoop, um, which I assume it was used to explain trajectories or something like that. And I also remember my dad passing by and watching it with me for a couple of minutes because he also watched that before. Not when he was a kid, but he watched it. He was from the 40s, I believe. I'm not good with dates, so um, he watched it um, after he was already older. So yeah, that was the time I would say TV started to not be for me anymore, which happened just a little bit before me going to the internet. When I started to see a shift from the educational stuff towards babysitter cartoons on TV. Um, the one channel I used to watch that was my favorite because most of their cartoons were educational and they would air one after the other, but then they started to have real people parts in between the shows. Like adults pretending to be kids, playing as kids, really dumb stuff, which I didn't like it because I thought they were treating me like a retarded. And they also started to change the shows, removing the educational stuff and putting stuff that was for really small kids, like Dora the Explorer, Miss Spider. Um, but yeah, so now instead of parents watching the shows with their kids and maybe like helping them to understand things, um, there were babysitter shows, the proto TikTok, where parents could leave the TV running and their kids watching the colorful stuff in there. I didn't um, like that. It felt too dumb for me. So thank God for the internet at the time. Um, and now we have Elsagate because of it. They dumbed down kids shows so much that today we have to deal with Elsagate. For whoever may not know, the Elsagate is a concept of kids YouTube channels run by very questionable adults whose videos are like Elsagate. The videos are like Elsa, but pregnant with Spider-Man's son. That's Elsagate. Um, Final thoughts? I don't know. Sometimes I wish to do something for kids just to show um, you don't need to treat them as vegetables for them to be entertained by your show. Like you can treat them as human beings capable of basic thoughts. And instead of saying things fall when you drop them, you can explain why they fall. Um, the audience will definitely be smaller, but you'll be able to sleep at night. But then the imposter syndrome kicks in, and I start to think there is more like qualified people to do so. And then there is also the real world problems to deal with. Um, Simply and easy to solve stuff, that still bothers a little bit, like being accused of being a pedophile. This went from zero to life in prison really fast. I remember this one guy um, that had a kids YouTube channel um, that he would teach some stuff, and some people started accusing him of grooming without any evidence, just because his target audience was kids. It turned out to be a nothing burger, as most of the internet. Um, but yeah, let's end this in a depressing note. When you're doing stuff for kids, you don't need to treat them um, as retards. You can aim a little bit higher. It will just depend on how good you are at explaining things in their level. Unfortunately, the audience will be smaller, but as I said, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing you don't do brain rot shows for kids.